Hey, this is Larry Romano, and you are listening to What a Character, the podcast dedicated to character actors.
Hey everyone, this is C. Thane Dixon, and on today's episode of What a Character, you will hear part 2 of my interview with Daniel Roebuck, where Daniel will discuss about how he almost got the role of Marv in Home Alone, his transition from actor to director, and the brilliance of the late, great Norm MacDonald. It's all that and more on today's What a Character. Hey everyone, before we get on with the show, I just want to tell you all about how you can help make this podcast a smash hit. As many of you may know, the success of a podcast all depends on the support of the audience. A good number of subscriptions, likes, and listens can help us attract high-profile guests, thus making the podcast a success. So let's say that you enjoy this show and you want us to make more episodes. Well, you can help us make that possible by subscribing to us and leaving reviews on podcast platforms such as Spotify, iTunes, and Stitcher, by liking and subscribing to us on YouTube, or by following us on social media. You can find the links to our YouTube channel as well as our various social media feeds in the episode description. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your help will be greatly appreciated. Now, on with the show. So in 1990, you were originally cast as Marv, the Daniel Stern role in Home Alone, but it didn't work out. What happened between you and Pesci? Was it just the chemistry not working, or?
Yeah, I mean, look, that was a great story that nobody knew about, and I had written about it in this book, and so they kind of buried my lead with that movie show. But they don't really tell the truth, unfortunately. It's simple. They kind of stated. So they wanted Chris Columbus and John Hughes wanted Daniel's Joe Pesci. And Stern wanted too much money for whatever. And then they gave me the part because they were going to force Stern to take less money. So the whole point of hiring me was just to screw with him. They were never going to film me as Marv. I was never going to be Marv. Now, that's the one thing they never say. I was never, ever, ever going to film as Marv. I got the wettest handshake of my life from John Hughes. It was the most disappointing handshake I ever received because I was a fan of the guy. And he clearly didn't want me to be there. It was all so obvious. And I was only there for like 4 days. And then there was a terrible snowstorm and I couldn't leave. After they fired me, I got stuck there. But, I was so dumb. I'm like, well, I recommended Bobby Madeira. I recommended other actors to take my place. I didn't know that it was a fait accompli before I even went there. Now, the joke was on them because years later, I took out a girl who happened to, at the time, have been dating a business affairs guy. So I got all the information. I know everything that happened. Because the business affairs guys, these guys are trained to screw over actors. They would come home and they'd be like, we're screwing over this guy for no reason, because they didn't want to pay me after they fired me. They had to pay me. Now, so that's kind of it. What things that disappoint me, Chris Columbus said, I will give you a great part in my next movie. Now, I notice he's done 20 since then, and he's never called. But what really was disappointing was, no one ever just told me the truth. So here's the 2020 hindsight. I didn't have to be in Home Alone. So that was hard when it came out, and it was the number one movie in the world 6 months in a row. Right. That was hard. Home Alone 2, it was hard. I wasn't part of the sequel of Home Alone. But here's the deal. Cullen. I wasn't in Home Alone, which meant I didn't ever have to be the guy who wasn't home. So Daniel Stern then, like if you go roll to roll or whatever, so Daniel Stern then became $1 million movie actor. He's not Brad Pitt, and he's not going to put 1 million seats.
Right.
So it's $1 million a movie. Probably got less for those Billy Crystal movies. But, 500,000, 600,000 anyway. Whatever he got, that's what he got. $1 million, whatever. So that's fine. But then what? Then what? Then you're a movie star whose self-value is $1 million or $500,000, and then nobody gives you a job because you're not worth it. Like, you're never going to put that much money back into the movie. So Daniel Stern, because he did get to star in Home Alone, look, go to 1990, go to my IMDb, go to his IMDb, and then look what's happened since.
Right.
It's mind-blowing. And by the way, the money, whatever, $1 million, $2 million, that money's gone. Nobody has that. That was 1990 money.
You got to work with Mel Gibson and We Were Soldiers. What was it like working with him?
Well, I was not in a scene with him. So we only crossed paths a little. I'm extraordinarily impressed by his acting and his ability as a director. So I was happy. That movie was really about, I told you I read fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Being part of Colonel Moore's story was an extraordinary blessing. I had the strangest thing happen. I was at an event at the Ronald Reagan Museum, and it was for Medal of Honor Awards, I think, or Medal of Valor. One of the, and this old guy says, "Wait a minute, I know who you are." And I turn and goes, "You're the medevac. You're the guy who sent Greg Kinnear into the shit." And I was like, "Yeah." I go, "How did you like the movie?" He goes, "Greg Kinnear was playing me."
Wow.
At this event, and he's staring at me, thinking he's just like the guy that I had to pull a gun on 40 years earlier. Isn't that something?
Yeah, it is.
Extraordinary blessing of a life.
You worked with Norm MacDonald on his series A Minute with Stan Hooper. Everyone who has worked with Norm has a great Norm MacDonald story. What can you tell us about what it was like working with Norm?
Well, Norm, oddly, is in the first place, although he's a comedian, he's a very great actor, by the way, something you may not know about. He is a very great actor, very good. He is a very good comedian and a good comic actor. I think he'd be, if I ever got around to it, we'd put him in a regular movie. Fantastic. But he didn't rehearse because he was also one of the writer producers. And we had the great Barry Kemp, was like the guy who gave us coach, was the overseer of what we had. So I don't know. Dan, I would have just let Barry Kemp make his series. But Norm is Norm. So he didn't rehearse. We had a great actor who rehearsed in his place. But it's not the same as having a guy. It's just not the same. So we would rehearse all day, and then Norm would come in and he'd do the show with the network, because you do it the network, consistently all week. And then he was there when we shot. So it was very odd. It was a very odd way to do a sitcom. And I've been on sitcoms, off and on with, when I think about it, it's kind of mind-blowing. I've been on a sitcom with Valerie Harper, John Hirsch, with Bob Newhart. I've been on a lot of sitcoms with a lot of top-notch talent, and I never saw anything like that. So I don't have any great Norm story other than to say I would love to know, I haven't seen Norm in years, but it'd be interesting to say, Norm, if you could, would you do it differently? Really what was necessary was he had to promote the hell out of the show. That's what happened, because it is great fun to watch. And if people just had an opportunity to watch it, I do not doubt that it would have fought on and lasted many years.
I remember it was a really funny show. Now, starting in 2005, you joined. You became a permanent member of Rob Zombie's acting company. What was it about you and Rob that made you guys inseparable?
Well, inseparable. I like that word. I don't know that he'd consider me inseparable. He had a way to separate me after a couple of scenes. Look, Rob is I went to see his concert. I thought this would be like if you said to Tippi Hedren, hey, we're going to go see Alfred Hitchcock. He's in the ice capade, because I only knew Rob Zombie as a director. And then I go to his concert and I'm like, God, what's going on here? It's craziness. And, as a director, he's like, hey, Dan, maybe we can make that a little funnier. And as an entertainer, like, and so, I mean, I'm a huge fan because I don't know, by the way, I truly don't know how he does both. And as a director, he's a great director. I've said this time and again. People cock off about his versions of those movies. Give me a break. They're better. Fine, write me letters. I don't care. Halloween 2, his Halloween 2 is an opera compared to Halloween 2. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's bigger, it's better, it's got more to say. Maybe you don't like the story, or maybe you don't like the way he went with it, but give me a break. The man is visually, he's a genius, and people should know, by the way, all the directors I've worked with, I would say he is the most hands-on director when it comes to what the movie looks like. Like if he doesn't like how something's painted, he gets the paintbrush, he goes and he repaints it. I mean, I don't do that. I mean, I'm like, but it's just like I don't change my tires either. I call it AAA. If I want to set, I'm like, did someone come in and could they fix that little thing there? Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Because I don't know. I don't want to get paint. Usually I'm in the movie too, so I can't get paint on my car. But Rob does it all. And then he writes the music for it. You know what I mean? So, but what connected us primarily, I hate to disappoint people, wasn't, I wish I could tell you that he was a huge fan of my acting. But the truth is, he collected Monster Toys. I collected Monster Toys, and that's what brought us together when we first met and we started talking. Actually, the first time I met him was before the time I met him officially. I met him at a store where they sold monster models, and a friend of mine says, my buddy John Gilbert goes, "Oh, hello, Mr. Zombie. What a pleasure to meet you." And I said, "The hell did you call this guy?" And that's how I really met Rob Zombie. And then we were at a screening of Pirates Hidden Hills a year or two later, and officially met there and exchanged numbers. Let's get together sometime.
So that's interesting. It was really your common interest in horror films and horror collectibles that really got that train moving.
I think so. And hopefully the train keeps returning to the station. I mean, we do have a good time working together, and I look forward to it in the future. I do kid him often about how, generally I have some lead role in the movie when someone else directs it. When I'm in his movie, tells me it to me. So maybe we'll work our way up to a bigger part one day. But the thing is about Rob too is I've been in a few movies that he's cut me out of. Like and I'm never offended. Honestly, the chances that you're going to get cut out by a friend are greater than by someone who's your mortal enemy. Your mortal enemy would be like, see, he'll think that I'm taking it personal. No, I'm leaving this scene in the movie. But your friend is like, oh, Roebuck will understand. He's a filmmaker. I can't use it. I'm not using it. So I'm not putting it in the movie.
A couple of years ago, you got to do your first motion capture performance in the LA Noire video game. How was it going from regular acting to transitioning to motion capture acting?
Well, I mean, acting is acting. Acting is acting. There is no, like, you don't really act differently in motion capture other than you might be playing a role differently. But in like LA Noire, that was one of those great games where it was different than how we do it now. because if you may or may not recall, LA Noire had a very the gameplay was some weird magical thing where you were supposed to figure out if the character was lying or not lying. So normally, when they film you, your head, your body are all filmed together. In LA Noire, we filmed our action, and then we went back and we filmed just our heads, like immovable. And your head did all the acting. No, get out of here. What are you doing? Run. And your head did everything. And then they put your head on your body. Because when the cop says, did you kill that kid? And you go, no, we were directed. Say it like you're lying. Say it like you're telling the truth. Say it like you really didn't kill the kid. Now say it like you killed him, but you don't want to get caught. Now say it like you killed him and you weren't happy about it and you're proud of it or whatever, It was very, it was very specific. Then after that, I did Dead Rising 3. Boy, that was a lot of fun to really kind of see that. And that's when I really found it freeing, because that's when the character I played and me were all one. And the guy I played was a big guy. And, instead of wearing padding, they just make you bigger. I don't know. I found it very freeing. I think you don't have a costume. You don't have a set. You only have the other actors. The only thing that's really difficult is if you have to kiss somebody, because your camera's in front of you and their camera's in front of them. And as you try to get your camera in there and their camera, because they could hook onto each other because you wear a camera out from your face. The thing about Grease is, by the way, the other thing I credit when I mentor actors, I say, watch old good movies with old good actors. Because when I walked in there, I knew the guy. I didn't know he was 4 foot tall. And I didn't know he had 4 arms, but I knew he was like Ernie Borgnine in every movie, because that's kind of what the thing was. So I went in and I kind of did that, for the guy. That's how I performed it. And then, 2 years later, you read up and they said when they conceptualized the character, they conceptualized him as Ernie Borgnine. So, thank God that I was smart enough to recognize that, that exactly was the, that's the archetype that they wanted. And I could only have known that because I watched so many old movies. And I'm probably one of the few people who had a waxed Ernie Borgnine in his house. There's that.
What would you say is your best performance, and what would you say is your most flawed performance? Because sometimes actors will say, "Oh, well, I could have done a lot better with that role, or I should have done this," and what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk about flawed performances. I don't want anybody to ask for their money back. Look, I've grown as an actor. I'm a better actor than I was when I was a kid. I'm using the same instincts. I've had life experiences that have helped me kind of become a fuller, more intelligent actor. Right? So, I'm better than I was. Now I know I'm a little more director proof. You know what I mean? Like now, if the director isn't good, I'm not reliant on him to guide me. I can take care of that myself. So that's what's come of age, is that I can fill in the parts that sometimes the creative people don't give you, whether the script isn't fully executed or the director is unclear. I'm very clear. And what's my best performance? I don't know. That's an interesting question, but I don't know that it's for me to say. I have great joy in working on things that I write, in seeing those come to fruition. I don't think that's ridiculous. But I also have had great opportunities, like playing Jay Leno and playing Gary Marshall, which I enjoyed as much. The work in Star Wars has been a blessing, and I think there's some other great stuff coming that hasn't hit yet, that I think it's some really good work. But I'm getting older and wiser and smarter, and so my choices as an actor are actually multiple. I'm smart enough to make other decisions.
In 2017, you produced, wrote, and directed and starred in the film Getting Grace. What made you want to move behind the camera and direct other actors and direct your own stories?
I've always written. I've always been a writer. I think I wrote a play in first grade, and I didn't even know how to write my name. So, I mean, I've always created stuff. And the reason that I couldn't do it before was because I was making my living as an actor, and that required 100% of my attention to the details of that kind of life, because I had a family. I had 2 kids, and I had a wife and a house, responsibilities, and Catholic school to put the kids into. So there was a lot going on. So I just could not start another career. So what's really happened is, over the course of time, I put money away, and I have a responsibility. Grown, and I've got a different wife. So this particular wife is very much my partner in this filmmaking. So I finally could become a director because I could really afford to be a director. I didn't always have to be available to act. So I've always wanted to. I always wrote scripts, and so it's just finally the culmination of a 35-year preparation.
Right. What advice would you give to actors who want to direct?
Start in the theater. Don't think, well, I'll just do it in a movie. I've start in the theater, start and become a director before you think that you could be a director. You got to really be able to communicate with people. Listen, I'm working on my thing now. If you really watched the dailies, you would think, what's this guy? How does he even do this? Because in the middle of my close, I'm saying, wait, you got to come in a little sooner. You in the background, I could tell you didn't cross at the right time. You got to cross. Remember, you're crossing when she's walking here, you're walking there. Like, because I know that when I get in the editorial, I won't be able to make the right choices, right? If everything else isn't right around me. So It's very difficult, but it's not impossible. So I started doing it in the theater. I've directed myself in a number of theatrical plays. And you have to find a group of people who trust you to tell them what they're doing wrong. But they never hear you tell yourself what you're doing wrong. But if they know you well enough, my team in our theater company always could see me adjusting my performance as I was adjusting. I just didn't have to. So it's not as easy as it looks, but it's not. It's not hard. Directing and acting isn't hard. Directing, producing is hard because of all the decisions that you have to make while you're acting. Some of them, by the way, complete. Like the guy you're screwing the most is you. I generally do my close-ups last. So when I'm working on the call sheet for the next day, and I'm saying this is the call time, I know that means that 12 hours before that will be my last chance to get my close-up right. Even if I have 3 hours to shoot, but only 2 hours till that cutoff. Understand what I'm saying? So I'm always thinking my performance I'll really be able to fix while I'm shooting, but the other performances, I need to worry about them because I'm clear on what I want.
Right. Let's get to a special segment where we're going to take audience questions. We're going to take questions from. I submitted a little questionnaire to people saying, "Hey, we got an interview with Danny Roebuck coming up, and have any questions for Mr. Roebuck? Please submit them." So we're gonna take a few questions.
I'm very impressed.
Laurel Fetterbush asks, "Are you really as sweet and likable as you were on Matlock?"
Yes, Laurel, I am sweet and likable. I'm not the raving jerk that I played on Criminal Minds. I'm more like the guy. Although, what did annoy me on Matlock is they made me such a goof. Like there was an episode where we did a triathlon and an 85-year-old guy beat me. 30-year-old man at the height of my physical, worked out every day. I ran every day. I didn't have an ounce of fat on me. And still the 85-year-old guy, like that was, and there was a point where I finally said, "Come on now, the 85-year-old guy doesn't get to finish before me." So I try to be, I try to lead the kind of life that would make my God creative.
Val Morris asks, "How involved was Andy Griffith in your character's development?"
Oh, he was. I mean, look, he wanted another funny guy on the show. So I think they had other assistants, but they were so serious. And he realized that as we were getting toward the end of the show, we had the last 3 years. He knew maybe we'd have a year, but we ended up getting 3. He wanted to be doing more comedy. So, that's why I came on. So, I could do the drama stuff if I needed to, but he could count on me. I truly believe to be a good foil and to be a good goofball. I think he really knew what he wanted and then gave me the opportunity.
John Curtis asks, "What was it like working with Andrew Davis on The Fugitive?"
Great guy. I don't know what else to say. He's just a terrific human being. He's got a beautiful family. Watch his kids grow up in Christmas cards. Isn't that funny? I haven't probably seen them. I saw them when we made the movie, and then I saw him about 7-8 years ago, but I haven't seen him since. He's a terrific talent. Another great example, by the way, we were talking about Peter Hyams earlier. Like here's a guy who was a shooter, became a great director. That's really kind of cool. And then U.S. Marshals and then U.S. Marshals was directed by a great editor who became a great director, Stuart Baird, who did Superman and The Omen and amazing movies. And then he's back to editing, and he's the one responsible in all this new the new James Bond. He's been doing a lot of that on those. Very smart man. I'd like to see him again. I haven't seen him.
Whatever happened to Andrew Davis? I know he hasn't directed in a long time.
He directs. I'll bet you if we looked him up, he probably directed something 3 years ago or 2. He probably also does a lot of commercial work.
Oh, okay.
Directors definitely have. That's a really great way to stay, living at a level.
Frank Murray asks, "What was it like working with Leonard Nimoy on Star Trek: The Next Generation?"
Well, I mean, in the first place, what do you say to Leonard Nimoy? It's like working with Harrison Ford. You know what I mean? What do you say to Harrison? At one point, it was just Harrison Ford and me, the two of us alone, sitting on the camera lens cases, all those cases that. But if the movie starts sitting on it, you're sitting on it. And I looked over at Harrison Ford and I said, "I don't know what to say to you." Because what do you say? "How was it on Tatooine?" Like, what do you say to the guy? So to Leonard, I really tried to stay out of his time. He was very busy. And we spoke briefly sometimes, but I was very keen to not annoy him. I mean, you're standing on a set and you're wearing pointy ears too, and you're like, "It's Spock, there's me, there's Spock." I don't know what else I want in my life.
Tell us about your upcoming projects. I know you just wrapped 2 films recently.
Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff coming up. So much of it top secret. Isn't that weird? I'm at a point in my life where I keep falling into these situations where I can't talk about it. Like the Hail Mary, my movie, I think people will like very much. It's a very funny nun and finds a guy who needs attention, and so she cons him into creating a football team for her all boys Catholic school so that he might. So the Hail Mary of the title, it's his last chance to get life right. And then we made another movie called Lucky Louie that, let me brag about my co-creator on that. There was a beautiful young lady, and I don't want to write any letters. I can say she's beautiful. My daughter. She wrote and directed the movie with me. We did both these movies in this COVID world, and neither movie did anybody ever get COVID.
Wow.
So, with the precautions we took were as good as we could take on our budget, but it still proved we proved to be lucky. And that movie's about an old retired cop who can't solve a bank robbery after 50 years. So ultimately, he teams up with his Bible study, comprised of 4 ex-convicts arrested and rehabilitated. Together they try to figure out how to solve this crime. So that's Lucky Louie. They're quite fun. We're almost done with Lucky Louie, and we're just beginning post the Hail Mary. So I would think one movie or both would be out next year.
It's amazing that you were able to complete both movies without anyone getting COVID. You always hear stories about, these film crews where like 1 or 2 people get COVID and then the whole thing gets shut down. What's the secret to keeping control of COVID on a set?
Maybe making faith-based films is a secret. Maybe I'm making movies that God wants made. So, I had a joke about one of the crew. We not only had no COVID, we had perfect weather while we were shooting the Hail Mary. I needed rain for one scene. Guess when it rained? The day I scheduled the scene, we started shooting the scene. It started raining, and then we were done, and then the rain went away. And
wow.
Afterwards, one of the actors said, "You must have a reel-in with Jesus," and I said, "Well, I didn't name the movie after his." So that worked out there. But I didn't understand, like Robert Pattinson on Batman got COVID. And I thought, how did he get COVID? How did the guy play Batman? How did they not protect him? It's possible. You just make sure that you mask the people who could make the other. And then there's no screwing around. In our world, we just said, if you're sick, don't come to work. Don't come to work and get tested. Don't say you might be sick. Don't come to work. The great news is I'm the writer, the director, and the producer. So if you don't come to work, I'll rewrite something. I'll figure a workaround, and no one will ever let that work. If you're a smart enough writer, you can solve any dilemma that comes your way. That is the thing that I don't understand. Even in these big movies, they don't track. I never. Characters act in a way that's completely, they say, this is what I have OCD. Characters will say, I have OCD. And then you'll go into their car and there's shit all in the car. Didn't you just make a point about that? But then the actor's like, I want stuff in the car. So, gotta be smart. I'm smart. That's me. I'm the Fredo of movie makers. I'm smart.
So this is a lesson to all you future filmmakers who are watching this. If you make a faith-based film, God will be in your favor.
Yeah, if you really are, doing the right thing, it might work. Look, would it have been, if I was making horror movies, would it have worked out? That I really don't know. I just don't know. But you got to do the best you can for your crew.
Well, before we leave, can you please leave us with some words of wisdom?
Probably not. I could try to say something smart already. What's the subject? Where's the wisdom about? Show business?
Yeah.
Here's my advice.
or life in general?
My advice. Well, this worked for remember what I was saying earlier about we are cogs in a greater. We're part of a greater story. We have our own story, and it's a very good story. Good. We're part of a bigger story. So, I mean, I think it's best to remember that say this to actors. You know what the main thing you could do to remind everyone that you respect them? Hang up your clothes. At the end of the shoot, I take my clothes off. I hang my clothes up. Even on Lost, healthy, dirty clothes, and I hang them back up. Why? Because it tells the person who has to come into your trailer to get your crap, you recognize their time is as valuable as your time, and making their life easy is not something that takes but another moment of your life to make their life easy, because otherwise they got to come into your trailer, and if the stuff's not being dry cleaned that night, they got to hang, and they got families to go home. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, just remember, part of if you're in show business, you're one factor of a million factors. It doesn't matter even if you have the lead in the movie. You may not be as important that day as the helicopter flying overhead. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think if we all just remember not our place, but our humanity, and realize that right next to us is humanity as best he can. So help them, turn around when you walk in the door, turn around and make sure someone's not walking behind you. Don't close the door in anybody's face.
Very, very wise words. Well, Danny, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on this show.
Yeah, I'm not so smart, but I do.
I think you're a lot smarter than you give yourself credit for. So don't beat yourself up.
I had a very good time, Colin, and I'm so impressed that I'm the first guest yet we already had questions. It must be quite special. But listen, I look forward to myself watching and following you, because there's one thing I love, and that is character actor and actor.
Well, then thank you very much, Danny. It means a lot that you decided to come on my show. This has been a great interview, and you've been a great guest.
All right, you have a great night, and to everybody listening and watching, be the best person you can be.
All right, thanks so much, Danny. Well, that about does it for this episode of What a Character. Thanks for listening. Now, I want to give a special thanks to Daniel's wife and manager, Daniel Roebuck, for helping set up this interview. And I also want to give a special shout out to Channel of Peace. It is a nonprofit organization founded by Daniel and his wife Tammy that is dedicated to producing faith-based family films. With the help of cash donations, in-kind donations, and grants, they have so far produced 2 feature films that are due for release pretty soon. So if you want to show the Roebucks your support in their endeavors to create squeaky clean family films with a godly message, then you can help by making a tax-deductible contribution to their organization. All you have to do is visit channelforpeace.org, click on Donate, and you will be taken to the donation page where you can offer your endowment. You can find the link to the website in the episode description, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just click on the link below. Now, before we end this episode, I just want to remind you that if you love the show and you want us to grow in popularity, you can help us do that by rating and reviewing this podcast. You can leave us a rating or review on iTunes or Spotify or whatever platform you stream and download podcasts from. You can even leave a review of our podcast on our website at whatacharacterpodcast.com. Just click on Rate Show and you'll be taken to a page where you can give your critique of the show. And while you're there, you can even donate to our podcast by clicking on the PayPal link and submitting your desired amount. And don't forget to subscribe to our email mailing list if you want to receive email alerts about upcoming shows or even receive email-exclusive episodes of our show. You can do this by typing in your name and email address on the right side of the homepage and clicking on subscribe. Now, if you want to reach out to us, please feel free to do so. If you have any guest suggestions or you just want to tell us how great you think the show is, you can do so by sending us an email at westgrovemedia@gmail.com. You could even leave us a voice message on the show website by clicking on the microphone button on the bottom right and recording a message. And please subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you stream and download podcasts from. And if you watch us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And hey, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, please give this video a like. All in all, your support will definitely help us not only make the podcast successful, but it will be greatly appreciated as well. Anyway, that about does it for this episode of What a Character. Join us next week for part 1 of our interview with Romeo Carey, son of actor Timothy Carey, where he will discuss his father's reputation for being the most fired actor in cinema history, his father's relationship with Stanley Kubrick, and his mentorship of legendary rock musician Frank Zappa. It's all that and more on next week's What a Character. Thank you for listening and take it easy. Bye.
What do you get when you send a guy back in time? A massive eruption. Especially when he meets his ultimate fantasy.
Oh, God. Foot.
A cave girl.
Now, let's move on to the biggie.
Rex is taking the trip of his life back 25,000 years and loving every century. Cave Girl from Crown International Pictures.